Hi everyone, welcome to Training with Casey, where we explore animal training and living our best lives with animals. I'm Joseph Laughlin, producer of this podcast, and now here's your host, Casey Cover. Let's get started.
Hey, it's Casey Cover, and I'm your host on Training with Casey. And recently, I did a podcast on the importance of asking permission. And then I said, there is another really important principle of training animals, and that was going to be my next podcast. And that is the importance of granting power and choice whenever you can, whenever it's safe. I have 5 things to keep in mind about this. You always want to recognize the sovereignty of another being. If you have power over them, you don't need to hold it over their head. You can just say, would you please do this? Are you able to do this? Will you help me with this? I've got to tell you, the more experience I have, the less I tell anybody to do anything. Because if you're any good as a trainer, you will be able to negotiate, inspire, influence. You don't have to get down to the point where it's a matter of force. It's a matter of coercion. Now, if you want to look it up, and I'm not sure where you're going to find this, but in 2013, I spoke at the Penn Vet Working Dog Conference. And at the beginning of the talk, I needed to demonstrate how we teach the bridges and the target. So I asked a trainer that I didn't know, and I met her later. She's a great trainer, Tekla Walton. She had a wonderful dog named Aries. And I asked her, do you mind if Aries is the demo dog? And she graciously said she'd be happy to do that. Spoiler alert, I got preoccupied while we were doing the talking. And after Aries did everything, I just walked off and didn't even say thank you. So I'm so sorry, Tekla, but I already told her I was sorry, but I relive it every time I talk about this. So anyway, you always honor everybody. And when you don't, you'll regret it. So I asked her if I could give Aries food, and she said yes. But Aries said no. Aries did not want the food that I had. But that didn't matter. I often work animals that do not or cannot have food. Like they don't want it, or they're allergic to it, or they're going to medical procedure. There are very powerful ways to influence animals that don't require food at all. So we'll leave that for another podcast. But if you want to see it in real life, go look up Casey Cover 2013 Penn Vet Working Dog Conference. And you can see Aries learn the bridges and the target. And another spoiler alert, takes less than 2 minutes. Hello. I'm a little defiant, aren't I? Okay, so you need to ask permission. You need to recognize that the animal has choices. And just like we have choices, we honor that and we ask them, will you do this? Can you do this? Now, here's another point on this. I'm going to give you 5 points related to this. You always want to allow control whenever you can. And if let's say the animal's perfectly willing for you to take something, but he has his mouth on it, and then you grab it and you start to pull it, that animal will pull back. I'm sorry, let me get a drink of water here. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Now, animals love to engage with you in play or even in one-upmanship. They often love to play tug. Here's the thing. If the animal just picked up your glasses, do you want to turn it into a tug game? If they have the remote control, likewise. If they are thinking of taking something, some food from a baby's hand, how do you want that to go? So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you want the animal to drop something or give it up, what action on your part is likely to create that? And let me tell you, this is so predictable that I can teach an animal to push or pull in a matter of seconds, just utilizing this principle. Very, very simple, except you have to get your timing has to be good. You have to be organized in your presentation and you have to keep it straight. Okay? You must respond appropriately. So you don't try to take something from an animal. You have to figure out a better way. Now, a third point is just as you allow control over things, you need to allow and honor choice. Boy, that is such an important aspect to the animal's quality of life. Wherever possible, let them make choices and let them take the honor, at least sometimes. I remember a conversation with Ivan Balabanov, and he was talking about how he let the dogs carry in the tug or the toy from time to time. Like he didn't always, require the dog to give it up and let him take it in. And I was really impressed by that. That's fair. That's fair. And it encourages the animal to love something more. I mean, just think about it. If you always had to pull yourself in, like, oh, I really want that tug, but I will never be able to carry it in, he will always take it. Yeah. I mean, it's so much better. Wow, I really love that tug. And I might be the one to carry it in triumphantly. These things matter, don't they? Like, if you don't think this matters and you don't try victory walks when your animal has made a breakthrough and so on, you're leaving money on the table. Okay, so we're on number 4. Speak respectfully. Speak respectfully. Don't bark orders. Make requests. Recognize the animal has free choice. Boy, there's so many places where that's important, but we'll save that for another time, a deeper discussion of it. Just remember, speak respectfully. I remember a time I was doing some work at the Kennedy Center, and I arranged for my sisters and their families to be able to come and watch the performance. My monkey was in an opera, and also I trained a sheep for the opera. It was the Amal and the Night Visitor. And I took my sister backstage, and one of the people that took care of things, like a janitor kind of person, was back there. And I introduced my sister and her husband and, you know, thank them for the things that they did for me and, just spoke to them for a few minutes. And then a few minutes later, the stage director came by and I introduced my sister and I thanked them and I spoke for just a minute and they left. And my sister goes, "You talk to everybody exactly the same way." Yeah, yeah. How else would you do it? How else would you do this? So every animal, my monkey was like 3.5 pounds, 23 inches long. She did not feel small in her mind. She would pick up the leash to the dog and tell the dog what to do. She'd pick up the leash and walk the dog to me in another part of the house. She'd pick up the lead rope of Sarah, my horse, and walk her. And the animals recognized that she was another being. She wasn't a small being, she was another being. And they treated her accordingly. So, the last thing you want to do is make an animal doubt their importance, doubt their position, their social position. So, you want to speak respectfully. And of course, that's related to the idea of you ask permission and you give choice. These are all about honoring the being that you are working with. And that's the fifth thing. You honor. You honor. You don't just speak to everybody equally, you honor everyone. You hold the space of respect and honor for that other being to occupy. You are creating the vision and the future reality of this sovereign animal rising to this occasion. Let's say they're not there yet, they will be there. You've got to see that and create it. You must hold sacred space for your animals, for your students. You've got to be confident that they will create the best out of the opportunity. Okay, so to review, you give power whenever it's possible and or safe. And we'll talk about safe in just a minute. And to do that, you recognize the sovereignty. So basically, all five of these things are recognizing the sovereignty of the animal and honoring them. So you're going to ask permission. You're going to allow control as much as possible. You're going to allow and honor choice. You're going to speak responsibly, and you're going to pay honor to them, to what they will become, to the work that they're doing, to the collaboration, to their importance to you. Now, what about the safety thing? I mean, you can't allow a tiger control, right? Wrong. You have to manage the situation so that you grant the control that it's safe to give. So I personally would not go in a cage or an exhibit with a tiger that I had just met and start there. I would start training that tiger through a barrier. And I'm on the outside of the exhibit area and he's on the inside, and he's free to do whatever he wants. He will hopefully want to come over and be trained, work with me, but he doesn't have to. But he's not able to injure me. I would do all the work I can over that barrier before I would even think about going inside with the animal. Now, you think about this. Let me bring to mind some videos on my YouTube channel. There's the one of the rhino. So the rhino, for 8 months, they could not flush the abscess under his horn. We did an air flush and a water flush in a 20-minute training session. And you can see it in the little video at sinalia.com/press. Now, when you look there, you're going to see that there's nothing that makes the rhino stay there with me. And the rhino didn't know me. He'd never met me before. And the only treats we had for the rhino were his everyday normal food. And let me tell you, he wasn't that excited about that food, and he didn't even like oranges. Okay? So, why did he come over? I think he came over because it was interesting. I was teaching him, I was sharing information with him, and I was seeing him as an intelligent, sovereign, responsible adult. And I talked to him and worked with him accordingly. And he could have just left, but he didn't. Not only did he not leave, but at a certain point, I had to go fill the syringe with water. So I told him, I think I told him what I was going to do. And his trainer was standing there feeding him food. And as I walked away to the sink to fill the syringe with water, the rhino starts to go with me. I didn't even have a treat that he wanted, but I had information he wanted, and I saw that he was intelligent, and I'm sharing it with him. I mean, just think about it. No matter how nice people are, if you were in another country and you didn't understand how things worked, and suddenly somebody came in and could effectively communicate with you and started explaining everything, wouldn't you be interested in that person? Yeah. So I'm saying you be that person. I be that person. Okay. So we're going to start over a barrier or through a barrier. You know, sometimes it's through a fence or over a fence or through a kennel wall. Okay, now we're going to get into some good trouble together. We gave you the 5 points about giving power, giving choice, honoring sovereignty, requesting permission, requesting cooperation. And then I said, as long as you can make it safe. And now I got to say, and I'm going to do another podcast on this, the physics of training. Now, it's actually really extensive. And a shout out to a colleague of mine. If he hears this, he's going to know it's him. And if he doesn't, that's okay too. But he likes to say, dog training isn't rocket science. Guess what? He's wrong. And I know a little bit about this because my father was a rocket scientist. My father was a nuclear physicist, and he worked on missile design, literally. And he and I used to discuss the behavior of particles. You know, physics is the behavior of matter. And guess what? The laws of physics apply to the behavior of organisms as well. I'm going to give you two little examples. I printed them off. So the first one has to do with what we're talking about. We're giving power. Because let's say you want something from an animal. And let's say, it's your glasses. You dropped your glasses and your animal picked them up. In one of the cases at the National Zoo, it was the director's keys, which he accidentally tossed into the pool. And Maureen went down to the bottom and picked them up. And I would like them back so that I can give them back to the director. You don't grab them. You ask the animal to give them to you. If you grab them, no matter if the animal was planning to give them to you, they're going to grab them back. And you're going to create a problem where there never had to be one. And the physics law that predicts this is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, if you want to teach an animal to push, you push first. If you want to teach an animal to pull, you pull first. It's that simple. If you want to teach an animal to give, you give first. Works like a charm. Now, there's another one that I'll mention, and this is just for fun. It's not directly related to this particular podcast. But the Heisenberg uncertainty principle says three things. And it says them about particles, but they're equally true about animal behavior. And excuse me, what it says is you never know for sure what an animal will be doing. So they've done studies of the behavior of dogs while their owners are away, of the behavior of lions during the day. And in both cases, they're 95% of the time they're going to be sleeping. So if you've been feeling guilty because your dog is at home in his little private air-conditioned crate, don't. Just go home and do great things together once you get home. If the dog is there for 10 hours even, is not really cutting into his behavior, okay? Because he naturally is going to sleep all most of that time anyway. So, but he might not be sleeping at any given instant. So 95% of the time, if you had a camera on him, you'd see him sleeping. But you can't predict exactly what instance he will be sleeping and what he can't. But you do know there are certain things he will not do by virtue of his nature. So, for example, if you've got a dog, you might not know for sure when he'll sleep and when he won't, but you can say with certainty that at no time will he be walking around upside down on the ceiling. Because by virtue of his nature, he just doesn't do that. He's not going to be flying, although there have been huskies that have tried. So the last thing is the fundamental property of nature. And in other words, animals go, particles go, kind of, they oscillate between different states. They're, in the case of particles, they can look like waves or they can look like particles. And with animals, you can't say for sure what they're going to do. But it's not because you don't have good measurement techniques. It's because by virtue of their nature, they can choose. Get it? They can choose, free choice. All right, I want to do a more in-depth podcast on the physics of behavior. I would really like to do that. And I'm going to try to do it for Father's Day. But in the meantime, I'm going to dedicate this podcast to my father, Donald Lee Cover. He was a brilliant, brilliant man, a physicist, a veteran and decorated veteran, and really the father that I needed. He taught me a lot of things and a lot of physics. And we discovered together how physics intersects with predicting and managing and understanding the behavior of living organisms, as well as matter that is not considered living. And before we leave that, just remember a rock isn't living, right? But we use rock for computer memory. Rocks have memories. I know because I have another relative. My sister is a geologist, and she'll pick up a rock and she can tell you the history of it. But I mean, it might not be, she might tell you the history like she literally picked up a piece of unakite in front of my house. And she goes, "Oh, this originally was in the Mid-Atlantic Rift. This originally was in Africa, blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, really? I take notes, right? When she starts to talk about these things. I went and looked it up. Dang, it did come over on the Mid-Atlantic Rift. It was originally from Africa. Who knew? If you can put memory on a piece of silicon dioxide, little piece of sand, like they do in computers, why can't a rock have memory? We're thinking about. Please comment. I would just love to hear what you think and what your observations are. And I hope you will try this out. I think that our society is showing us how important respect and honor is amongst all of us. Those that have power have the greatest need to show respect to others. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Please like, share, comment. Take care. Good night.
Hey fans, are you enjoying Training with Casey? Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Casey Cover on YouTube. That is youtube.com/C/Casey Cover. Also, give the podcast a like, share, and comment. Thanks for joining us. Come back for more news and views on animal training and living with animals. Stay at the top of the pack with Casey. This is Joseph Laughlin, producer of Training with Casey. See you next time.